Hello, this is Sophomore Astrology. My name is Sarah, and for this video, I'm going to talk about the Virgo Ascendant or Virgo Rising. Now, be sure to like, share, and comment on this video. Also, subscribe to my channel. And I'm on Instagram at Sophomore Astrology. I also have a website. There you can check out my blog. And you can also book a natal chart reading at sophomoreastrology.com if you would like to. Let's get into the video. So as I said, this video is about someone's Virgo Ascendant or someone's Virgo rising sign. Meaning that, Virgo is in their first house. And then after that, kind of all the houses are kind of aligned for after the subsequent, sign of Virgo. So after Virgo, there's Libra. In the first house, there's Virgo. In the second house is Libra. Third house is Scorpio. Fourth house is Sagittarius. Fifth house is Capricorn. Sixth house, you have Aquarius there. In the seventh house is Pisces. Aries is in the eighth house. Taurus is in the ninth. Gemini is in the 10th house. Cancer is in the 11th house. And Leo is in the 12th house. So this is how the houses are set up for someone with their Virgo rising. Meaning that in every area, each house represents an area of someone's life. And then the sign that kind of takes over that area of life kind of gives it that nature of how people are going to experience certain things when they come across them as they kind of live their life on, And when we're talking about the ascendant sign, even more specifically and how that's calculated, when you're looking at someone's birth chart, there's a reason why certain information is asked. You need to know your birth date, your birth time, and also the place you were born, because astrology is also based off of, geography as well. So the reason why the ascendant sign is so dependent on what time you were born, because the ascendant sign changes every 2 hours. Think about it, 24 hours in a day, 12 signs. So each sign has 2 hours when someone is born to kind of give them that energy. So, the sun changes every month, the moon changes about every day and a half, but the rising sign changes every 2 hours. So that's why it's important to know your birth time when you're calculating where everything goes. And just because you are a Virgo rising doesn't mean that your houses are going to be aligned perfectly, and that's okay. Astrology is not meant to I think with this being a Virgo ascendant video, it's very interesting because I think I'm going to talk about the theme of it. If it's not perfect, it's okay. You might have Capricorn both in your 5th and 6th house, and that's okay. That just kind of explains those areas of your life better, and it brings about more clarity. So with that, I hope I kind of explained what an ascendant sign is, why it's important to know your birth time, and exactly for Virgo ascendants, why it's important to know kind of which sign is in which house as you try to understand what your ascendant sign means. Now, just an FYI, I'm not going to talk about every sign in every house, as I mentioned, when it comes to someone having their Virgo rising, but I'm definitely going to talk about the major areas in life that someone might experience with this rising sign. So before I kind of talk about what it means to be a Virgo rising more specifically, I just wanted to bring some celebrities or talk about some celebrities who have this rising sign. So as an example, I have Keanu Reeves, Usher, Sharon Stone, Forrest Whitaker, Julie Andrews, Jay-Z, Christina Ricci, and then we also have Ryan Reynolds. Now, in the Pisces rising or the Pisces ascendant video, I was incorrect. Ryan Reynolds is in fact a Virgo rising, and I kind of felt like he was kind of like the oddball of that group, so it kind of makes sense why, it makes sense when I kind of really relied on a more reliable source. I realized that Ryan Reynolds is in fact a Virgo rising, so hopefully that kind of brings light to maybe what someone looks like or how they're presented or how their personality is externalized when they have a Virgo rising sign. Okay, so Virgo in the first house. That means that someone, when it comes to like their appearance, how they look, their body, their identity, how their personality is really externalized to the rest of the world, it's the nature and the characteristics of like Virgo, you know. So when people first meet this individual, they think that this person is very like mentally sharp, very analytical. You know, I kind of feel like someone having a Virgo rising, it's like an average person putting on glasses and looking that much smarter or looking that much more sophisticated. You know, I feel like Virgo risings have a very like they look like a very serious writer or poet, you know, someone who's really trying to concentrate on what they're about to say and what they're thinking. These people look very thoughtful to me. They also are kind of intimidating in the way that you kind of feel there's an energy there that maybe they are looking into things and they're seeing and watching, and they're more aware of what they might let other people know. They have a very calculated look about them, a very studied look. Because when you think about it, Virgo in the first house is saying in so many ways that the planet Mercury is in the first house. You know, because Virgo is ruled by the planet Mercury. Mercury is all about communication and thought and technology. You know, Mercury is the first planet of the solar system. It's the closest to the sun. And not only that, I also find it interesting that the planet Mercury, the core of it is iron, and as it's cooling over time, Mercury is getting smaller and smaller. And I just think it's interesting how like even technology has kind of advanced in that way, where smaller is better, being more efficient is better, you know, taking less space, taking less time. These are all things that characteristics that you might get off of someone who has their Virgo rising or Virgo in the first house. You know, that very like tech savvy type person, they kind of see like they just look like a person who works at Google or looks like a person who works at Apple, you know, regardless of what they do for life. That's kind of like the impression you get off of someone with Virgo in the first house. Okay, so people with this placement, they may have Scorpio in the third house. Now, the third house belongs to Gemini, meaning that the third house is all about communication, intellect, thought. I also kind of want to say that how did your brain kind of form as a child? Like, how do you pick up information? You know, how do you communicate? Like, in what style did you learn how to communicate as a kid? This is definitely like very, it's the house of early childhood development too, I want to say. So when someone has Scorpio in the third house, this person definitely learned that saying less, when you say less, you're really saying more. These people really kind of value calculated speech. You know, they might be very good at being poets where they're able to express so many emotions in as little words as possible. I kind of feel like these people, they really pick up on conversations because they understand, like, because Scorpio is so deep and Scorpio is analytical, especially when it comes to emotions. They're able to really detect like different layers of conversation. There could be three things being said in one conversation, you know, depending on the tone and the context and the time and how it is said, versus just focusing on the words itself. These people are not going to kind of like, they're the opposite of a blabbermouth. And I think that's also why they come off very serious and calculated in their appearance and in their approach. Because they definitely want to be careful about what is being said, and they value people who definitely are careful with their words. You know, for good or for bad, they want to make sure that, you know, their intentions are not being revealed to the wrong people. And it's almost like they have such a keen mind. It's very sharp, and it's very, it can kind of just get into the specifics and understand the specifics of a situation just by being in the environment, if that makes sense. So that's kind of like my sum of Scorpio in the third house with people with this rising sign. The next house I'm going to talk about is that people with Virgo risings, they have Sagittarius in their fourth house. Now, the fourth house is all about Cancerian energy, Cancer, because Cancer is ruled by the moon. So the fourth house is all about femininity. How were you nurtured as a child? It's about your childhood. It's also about your ancestors, too. And it's also kind of like it describes the nature of who your feminine parent was, or your mother, your mom. And even it's not your mother or your mom, it's whoever kind of like nurtured you and kind of gave you that motherly vibe, regardless of what their gender and sex happens to be. So when you're talking about putting something like Sagittarius in the fourth house, their childhood could have been a very happy, very jovial environment. Maybe they came from a place where also too, where certain things were in abundance, whether it's money or people or whatever. It was just their home in some way was kind of abundant, in any way you can kind of think of it, and when we're talking about putting something like Sagittarius in a very feminine house, it's a little uncomfortable. Maybe that feminine person who was the nurturing person might have had more masculinity than, I guess what I'm trying to say in so many ways, it's like maybe the person who nurtured you may have also like practiced in their masculine energy a lot, if that makes sense. It could also be because Sagittarius is an energy that is known to be the untamed horse and to kind of be wild. People with this placement, they might have like moved a lot as a kid. Travel might have been very much a thing growing up. It could also be that maybe like education was very important. Maybe they grew up in a family of teachers, or they just had a lot of knowledgeable professor type people who were always kind of like teaching, giving wisdom, dropping gems. I kind of feel like the motherly person in their life definitely gave them a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge, a lot of head knowledge, and a perception of how to see the world. They might have not given them like so much as like physical stability, but they definitely might have given them a way of seeing the world or perceiving things maybe differently, to be more worldly and kind of like explore and travel and have a passion for kind of seeking out yourself for the answers. These people might be very comfortable living a life where they kind of move around easily. They might travel a lot. They definitely might love like learning. They feel very loved. That could be a love language for them, is that if someone is willing to teach them or listen to what they have to say, and they allow, like if someone else allows them to teach someone else, I feel like that's a love language for these people. There is that Sagittarian energy is very nurturing and comforting to them. It makes them feel at home, and they might actually have quite a bit of friends that are Sagittarius people, because maybe if their biological family is not their family, they definitely will make a family of people who are very Sagittarian, very untamed and wild, and really don't have any direction because they just kind of want to explore and see what's out there. That is definitely the spirit of maybe their feminine parent, and that's kind of maybe how they also see how feminine energy could be played out in their life. They might constantly see that theme in their life. Okay, so the next house I want to talk about is the fifth house, because Capricorn is in the fifth house. Now, the fifth house belongs to Leo, and the thing about Leo energy, and at least when we're talking about the fifth house, it's all about drama and creativity. It's the house of children. It's also the house of like romance and dating. That very playful energy within yourself. How are you as a kid? Like how are you with kids? It kind of also describes maybe how someone will be when they do have kids, what kind of parent they will be like. And when you put Capricorn in this house, it's kind of like Capricorn is a sign that is very strict, very rigid, very law and order. It's very, these are the rules, and we're not breaking the rules because these are the rules, And it's like when you put that energy into a house like the fifth house, it's like that's why I feel like Virgo risings have this seriousness about them, that kind of can come off very intimidating, because they literally, in their playful house, they have an energy that is very restrictive and very serious and very kind of like, the authority figure is in this playful house. So when it comes to dating, these people might be very strict in how they view dating. They might have a very strict regimen about how they go about dating. Maybe they're very choosy about who they date, or maybe the way that they date, it's like, I only do this after 3 dates, and I only do this after 7 dates. And it's like, I think that there's like a rigidity, to something that should be very playful. When it comes to children, they might have a very strict like way that they go about being around children, or if they have their own children, they might be the stricter parent. They might not play as much with their kids, but they definitely will be that authority figure that might bring order to everything. And I also kind of feel like this is why Virgo risings might have a hard time kind of loosening up depending on what else is in their chart, because it's kind of like they don't feel like they could really like be playful and, really explore that inner child, because it's almost like their inner child is kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but it's like it's combined with this very fatherly, very restrictive, very like, I can't do this, I can't do that energy. So I kind of feel like that's where Virgo risings, like, they need to kind of maybe learn from others how to kind of incorporate that playful attitude and that playful nature to things, especially like dating. Dating shouldn't be anything too serious at the same time. So it's kind of like there's a need to kind of remember to lighten up when it comes to situations that really are meant to just be fun. Don't put rules and so many regulations on things that are supposed to be purely there for the purpose of just having a good time, So yeah, that's Capricorn in the 5th house. Okay, so the next placement I want to talk about is that people who have their Virgo rising or Virgo ascendant, they have Pisces in the 7th house. Now, the 7th house it belongs to Libra. 7th house energy is all about harmony in relationships and the ebb and flow between two people or two energies. And when you put Pisces in this house, it's kind of like when it comes to their partnerships, either whether platonic or romantic, they attract very ethereal, fantastical people. It's almost like, in order to kind of balance that energy of kind of being serious and analytical and kind of knowing what is what, and really trying to find the imperfections to give something perfection, that's very earthy energy, and it's very specific and detailed type of like vibe that comes off of people with this energy. So it makes sense that they would attract people who are kind of lost souls, who don't really know up from down, because they're so multidimensional beings, and it's so easy for them to kind of get lost in the reality of this world. They kind of need someone to bring them back. I think these energies can definitely learn a lot from each other, because a Virgo ascendant person can teach someone with this Piscean energy, like, hey, today is Tuesday, you need to take out the trash. Like, they'll give them very like everyday activity, like remind them of everyday activities that they need to do in order to just function in this 3D world, and they're able to kind of give them a reality check. But like, for good or for bad, I feel like people with Virgo energy can be a good reality check for other people, to remind them what they have to do, and what errands they need to run, and how do they kind of like get their household or their matters in order. Virgo risings are very good at that. And that's why they attract people who might not know how to do those things. But I think what the Piscean energy teaches to Virgo is that, like, okay, sometimes, you can skip a week of not putting the trash out. Or it could be something like, hey, there's more to this life than the everyday mundane things we need to do to maintain it. I feel like Piscean people definitely remind other people that there is more to this life. There's a spirituality to it. There's you are a multidimensional being, and there's more to this world than this third dimensional world. And I think they need people to remind them that, because I think Virgo energy can be so hyper focused on what they're doing, and they can kind of really zoom in on something that they forget like the bigger picture of it all. And I think Piscean energy reminds them of that. So it makes sense why these polar opposites kind of come together, and they're able to learn so much from each other. And I think that's what brings about that long-term relationship, regardless of what kind of relationship it is. I think that's where that longevity comes from, because both of these energies can learn so much from each other. And it's almost like this is what gives Virgo ascendants balance. You know, they need this balance from that Piscean energy to kind of come into their life. So yeah, when it comes to relationships, whether it's like marriage or partnerships that are going to last a long time, you know, this is also the seventh house is also about open enemies. They can really learn from their enemies, you know what I'm saying? Because their enemies will have like a Piscean nature to them, where it almost feels like their enemies feel like a nightmare to them. You know, it kind of gives them that dark side of what a dream of people in the dream state are. So with that, that's, you know, Pisces in the seventh house. Gemini in the 10th house. So the 10th house is all about that Capricorn energy, because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn's all about law and order. It's about rules. And it's also about like career and reputation, your fame. When you pass on, like, what are you going to be known for? What are people going to remember about you? What is your legacy? You know, and also too, the 10th house is also about that fatherly masculine figure in your life. Like, what was that person? How did it look? You know, in the people in your life who kind of had that masculine energy, they might have had like a gift for gab. And how did they go about using that gift of gab to build a career? Because people with Gemini in the 10th house, they could be very good at communication and thoughts and ideas, and kind of really having new and brand and fresh ideas coming through, you know, because Gemini is also ruled by Mercury. So it's almost like they have the planet of Mercury when it comes to all their career and how they go about making money in this world. And honestly though, these people, because of Gemini is known to have such a strong polarity with that energy, they could be known for saying the greatest, wisest things, especially with Scorpio being in that third house, where these are very deep thinkers and they don't want to say anything that is not like worthy of being said. So it's kind of like, I could understand that these people, like the most simplest way I could say that people could be a very renowned writer or author, right? But also too, it's kind of like there's a polarity with that where they could be kind of known for saying outlandish things, you know, or kind of like having deep emotions, and depending on how it's perceived to people, it could be very good or it could kind of go very south. I would also say that maybe like their fatherly masculine figure might have been someone who said a lot but didn't really back up what they said, or want, like, it's like they said stuff to them or maybe promised things but they didn't really fall through, because that's a very Gemini energy to just say something to say something. And people might have learned that masculine energy, or at least the masculine energy that they were around, were probably people who didn't really stick to their word. And I definitely feel like that was an energy that they kind of like dealt with during their childhood. And on the other hand of it, when it comes to what they're known for, it's because Gemini, like I said, could say things just to say things. It's very careful. You have to be careful with this placement, because you could easily have the reputation of a liar, you know, of someone who doesn't tell the truth. And if you are really not true to yourself and true to your own path and career and everything like that, then it could be easily seen to the rest of the world that you're putting on a mask. And you're putting on a mask, you know, and the people don't really understand like they might not understand who you are, especially when it comes to like what you're trying to portray about yourself, especially when it comes to your reputation, your career, and what you're known for. It might be hard for people to kind of pinpoint that. So it's definitely important to kind of be true to yourself as you're trying to kind of make things happen and make money and make something of yourself in this world. It's important to be honest and to use your words, because your words are very powerful, could be very affecting towards people. So there needs to be an understanding that there is a lot of power with words, and that they need to be used very carefully, especially when it comes to kind of going forth and kind of expanding your career. So that is Gemini in the 10th house. Leo in the 12th house. Now, the 12th house belongs to Pisces, and the 12th house is about your subconscious. It's a lot about your karmic history, your karmic debt, if there is any. Usually there is, if you've kind of come back and now you have another life that you have to live to figure things out. But the 12th house is about your dreams and your undoing. Kind of what is your soul lesson in this lifetime? Because with Leo being in the 12th, that kind of tells me that someone in past lives might have really captured and understood and really learned the lessons of a Leo. Leo energy is very strong and it's very confident. It has a healthy sense of self-esteem. If we're talking about like the most like high vibrational Leo type of energy, Leo is definitely very celebratory of self, and really celebrates the strengths, and doesn't really necessarily focus on the weaknesses. Just honestly, there's just a focus on like, I am me and I've accomplished this and I should be celebrated and I am deserving of good and great things. And I honestly feel like this could be someone's undoing for someone who's a Virgo ascendant or has a Virgo ascendant and Virgo rising, right? Because it's like that could turn to be a nightmare. I think Virgo energy is so focused on the details and being perfectionistic and wanting to focus on weaknesses and focusing on limitations and focusing on maybe what is wrong with the system to make it better. But kind of like the way Leo approaches the world is by celebrating the strengths and focusing on what has already been accomplished and done. So I kind of feel like a person with this placement, with all these houses placed this way, they're undoing. They could really like fall if they don't really learn to celebrate the things that are great about them. I think Virgo is in such a rush to kind of be complete, because, Virgo, with being the ancient meaning of virgin, which is the symbol of Virgo, is really to be complete, not to be pure, but to be complete. And sometimes it could be such a strong drive to feel complete and to feel like everything has been done and there's check marks in every box of their to-do list. That's great. But there is a need to kind of like enjoy life and to really celebrate yourself and to understand that it's okay if you don't have it all together, but you're still amazing and great regardless. That's the awesome energy about Leos, is that they understand that they're awesome and great regardless of what was done on their to-do list, regardless of what errands they got to finish or didn't get to finish, And I really think that people with Virgo energy need to remind themselves of that, and yeah, so that's like Leo in the 12th house. I feel like in past lives, they really knew how to be the life of the party, but in this lifetime, they're kind of learning how to incorporate that energy while also juggling the energy of wanting to be very perfectionistic as well. So that is my take on Leo in the 12th house. So that's Virgo ascendant, or, someone's Virgo rising sign. And pretty much in a nutshell, these people can be very serious, very analytical, very intellectual, and they're able to kind of really sift out and really be detailed enough to see imperfections and really try to improve them. But also, too, it's like there's a need to be remembered to kind of celebrate yourself and to kind of be more lighthearted, especially if there is room and the opportunity calls to be fun and to be childlike. I feel like there's a need to kind of remember that, because that Leo energy was mastered in a past life. And Also too, I just want to say that it makes sense why, you know, these people can sometimes like attract very like lost but very ethereal, multidimensional people that they will learn a lot from. And I think the reason why Virgo wants to be so grounded in reality is because maybe in their childhood they had, you know, Sagittarius and Gemini type of parents or people who raised them. And Gemini and Sagittarius are known for being mutable energies, meaning that it's hard for them to have direction, and it's also difficult for them to be kind of very stable and fixed and kind of bring about that like stable energy that someone might need. And I honestly feel like Virgo risings, they kind of rise above that and they end up being that person in their own life to really bring organization and order and things into their own space and their own environment. And I feel like that's also why they kind of externalize this personality towards others. But like I said, it's just these people are definitely can service people and service a lot to the world, just them being themselves. And with that, I just want to say thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video and have a great rest of your day.